was just incredibly rapid.
Moving right along to Section 2, the June heat dome.
If May was just a warning shot, mid-June was absolutely the main event. A massive atmospheric phenomenon, what meteorologists call an omega block, basically parked itself right over the continent. This acted like a giant heat dome, trapping hot air and completely suffocating Central and Western Europe. And this was days before the summer solstice even began. And this table brilliantly illustrates the sheer intensity of that dome. We're not talking about edging past old records by a fraction of a degree, no way. The Czech Republic hit 41.9 degrees Celsius. The Netherlands saw their June record smashed with 39.4 degrees, and in a really astonishing jump, Germany recorded an all-time high of 41.7 degrees. Across 13 of the 16 German states, all-time temperature records were just obliterated. The historical data charts essentially had to be thrown out and redrawn.
Which brings us to Section 3, Infrastructure Under Pressure.
So this extreme heat quickly turned into a relentless stress test on modern European society. The built environment simply wasn't engineered to handle this level of sustained thermal energy. And the disruptions were honestly bizarre. Nuclear power plants in France forced to completely shut down. The concrete on the famous German autobahns literally expanded and burst open. Imagine a 600-meter freight train in Sweden derailing for no other reason than the steel tracks warping in the sun. Or drawbridges in the Netherlands seizing up and stranding ship traffic because the metal components expanded too much. Our modern engineering was physically melting and cracking under the pressure.
And to really understand how this disrupted local ecosystems, just imagine your own local river shrinking by 80% practically overnight. Well, that is exactly what happened to Italy's Po River. The flow essentially collapsed, dropping from a June average of 1,500 cubic meters per second all the way down to just 300. The waters heated up to 21 degrees Celsius. This triggered macroalgae growth, a sudden massive infestation of blue crabs, and a massive die-off of clams. For the local fishers who rely on that river, it was an immediate, devastating environmental crisis.
Then we have the violent atmospheric fallout, 413,860. That staggering number is the exact amount of lightning strikes recorded in the Netherlands during a single severe storm at the tail end of that June wave. The extreme heat created so much atmospheric energy that when a cold front finally met the heat dome, it literally exploded into violent, terrifying thunderstorms, complete with flash flooding and giant hailstones.
The environment was so oppressive outside that major cultural touchstones had to be completely abandoned. The annual Battle of Waterloo reenactment in Belgium? Cancelled. Paris Pride? The Solidays Music Festival? Both of them had to be called off at the direct request of the police prefecture due to severe health risks. The heat fundamentally brought normal public life and massive public gatherings to a dead halt.
Now, let's turn to Section 4, the human toll. It is absolutely crucial that we ground all of these soaring temperatures and wild infrastructure statistics in the stark reality of what happened. Because beyond the buckled roads and the canceled festivals, there was a deeply tragic physical cost here. During the height of the heat waves, conservative estimates anchor the loss of life at over 1,405 individuals. As you can see, France recorded roughly 1,040 excess deaths, Spain 327, and the UK 25. These fatalities were heavily concentrated among the elderly, the chronically ill, and vulnerable shut-ins who simply couldn't escape those suffocating temperatures. The strain on the medical system caused a really devastating domino effect. In France alone, the heat caused a massive 61% surge in emergency calls compared to the previous week. That surge completely overwhelmed hospitals and first responders. And tragically, as desperate people sought relief in unsupervised waters just to escape the heat, there was a sharp, alarming spike in drowning deaths across the country, which further taxed a system that was already pushed way past its breaking point.
Finally, we reach Section 5, the climate connection. So why did this unprecedented event happen, and why so early in the year? To figure that out, we have to look directly at the scientific consensus. Right after the event, scientists from the World Weather Attribution Group conducted a rapid analysis, and their findings were incredibly definitive. They concluded that a comparable June heat wave would have been, quote, virtually impossible back in 1976 without human-caused climate change. Furthermore, climatologists explicitly stated that the El Niño weather pattern did not contribute to this specific severe heat. The scientific focus was firmly on long-term, human-driven climate shifts.
Interestingly, looking at the root causes reveals two completely distinct conversations unfolding in the wake of all this. On the political side, figures pointed the finger at fossil fuel interests, blaming them for actively obstructing European Union green policies. But on the scientific side, the community kept their focus strictly on the measurable indicators of human-caused climate change. It's a striking contrast, seeing how the exact same devastating data is interpreted and acted upon by policymakers versus climatologists.
All of this data, the melted roads, the tragic death tolls, the obliterated records, really set the backdrop for a powerful address by UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. He stated, "We have just lived through the 11 hottest years ever recorded. El Niño is not just knocking on the door, it risks blowing the house down, turning up the heat, disrupting food and water systems, and hitting the vulnerable the hardest. It is a stark, authoritative warning that cements the vulnerability of our global systems."
So, the really crucial point we are left to ponder, the main takeaway from all of this source material is this: is the world actually prepared for the new normal of extreme weather? We've seen exactly how quickly spring can vanish and how fragile our modern infrastructure really is when it's pushed to the limit. Well, thank you for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning the data, keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.